This is always the most interesting part. Our professors. We look at our professors, you're teaching me justice, but you're not incorporating it in your life. How have you dealt with faculty? How have you gotten your own message across?
Well, that's an interesting question you ask. And I will say first that I feel a little bit intimidated to be here with all these bright lights shining in my eyes at a much larger audience than I have in my graduate course on algebraic geometry. You asked the question, how do you reach somebody who has never had to deal with the struggle? Well, I did not grow up in the Israeli-occupied West Bank. I did not grow up in apartheid South Africa. I grew up on the corner of West 116th Street on Broadway in Manhattan, across the street from the Columbia Gates, and I did not have to struggle with any severe political problems when I was growing up. But I've gradually come to realize that that the struggle that is faced especially by those who are fighting for justice in the Middle East is inextricably connected to what happens in American society in New York and Columbia. And of course, the events of the last 2.5 years really brought that home to us. I also have to say, on a personal note, that somehow I managed to miss both the student strike of 1968 and the one in 2024. In 1968, I was 1 year old, and my father had a sabbatical leave and took us to the West Coast. Then in 2024, I had a sabbatical leave and I was in Cambridge. And I was very lucky that I missed it, actually, because I'm sure I would have gotten in trouble one way or another. But I watched from afar, and I will say that the actions of the student demonstrators, you might quibble with the relevance of divestment, both in the South African case and in the Israeli case. Suppose that Columbia had announced, okay, we're going to divest, would that have actually changed the situation in Gaza at all? Perhaps not. But for sure, the demonstrators had an uncanny ability to influence public opinion. And I will say, being in Cambridge at that time, within a few weeks of the encampment going up in New York, there was an encampment on King's Parade in Cambridge with tents, and the student demonstrators explicitly said that they were inspired by the demonstrators at Columbia. And all over Europe, public opinion, elite opinion, popular opinion swung very, very dramatically in sympathy with the Palestinian cause. And I think the same thing is true in America. So, Columbia is only a sideshow in this struggle. Columbia is not at the center of what's going on by any means. But we can take a little bit of pride in knowing that the efforts of people like Mohsen, did have a tangible effect.